Good evening and welcome to the special meeting of the Fairfield RTM on October 10th, 2019. Will the clerk please call the roll?
Chesaray.
Here.
Nancy Lefkowitz. Here. Mike Mahoney.
Here.
Amy O'Shea. Here. Bill Gerber.
Here.
Aaron Lopez. Here. Eric Newman.
Here.
Sue Perram. Here. Alex Durrell.
Here.
Matt Jacobs.
Here.
Sandra Marshall. Here. Sharon Pastilli. Here. Alice Kelly. Bill Pierce.
Here.
Bonnie Bertelli. Here. Marcy Sawyer. Here. Josh Garstall.
Here.
Joe Siebert. Bruce Snag.
Here.
Jay Wolf.
Here.
Pat Ambrose. He is here. Steve Barrett. He's right there. Steve here. Hannah Gale. Here. Lisa Hagan. Present. Warren Bove. Here. Mark McDermott.
Here.
Bill Vergara. Here. Karen Wackerman. Here. Terry Burcham. Here. Himalaya Tono. Here. Christine Messina. Here. Peter Tallman.
Here.
Brian Farnan.
Here.
Drew Georgiadis. Doreen Herron. Here. Margaret Horton. Here. Tim Cargill. Michael Hurley.
Here.
Frank Batiste. Eric Sundman.
Here.
Please rise for the Pledge of Allegiance. Pledge allegiance. Okay, the first item on the agenda tonight is to consider and act upon the following resolution as submitted pursuant to section 4.3C of the Charter of the Town of Fairfield to be presented to the First Selectman with a request that the item be afforded a discussion and vote for adoption by the Board of Selectmen. Whereas it is determined that the processes, policies, and procedures of the Charter have broken down as related to the Fairfield aggregate fill pile operation and have led to an environmental crisis and allegations of government corruption. And whereas there is consensus that the powers to investigate and administer oversight into an investigation should no longer reside with the First Selectman, but instead with an independent firm that shall report to the Board of Selectmen, let it herefore be resolved that the Board of Selectmen shall contract with a credible outside independent firm that specializes in risk, crisis, and business continuity management to study the history of the Fairfield aggregate fill pile operation, to conduct an operational audit to determine operational efficiencies as related to the town charter, including but not limited to the bidding process, contract execution, lease procedures, and conflicts of interest. 3, recommend for hire and oversee an independent licensed environmental professional to review all fill pile lab tests, including but not limited to the fill pile itself, field, park, sidewalk, conservation area fill lab tests to determine reliability of work performed, whether any remaining work is recommended, as well as to review remediation work performed, proposed, and outstanding, and recommend additional remediation if any. 4, review the charter written standards of ethics, including conflict of interest, and make a recommendation for administrative regulations on whistleblower policies, ensuring that standards of ethics are regularly and appropriately communicated to all employees, external contractors, and board and commission members, and that breaches of ethics are reported, received, kept confidential upon request, logged, pursued, and resolved/disposed of through the proper channels. 5, the outside firm shall report to the 3-member body of the Board of Selectmen, BOS, and it shall be the responsibility of the outside firm to report its findings and recommendations to the BOS, the Board of Finance, BOF, and the representative town meeting, RTM, on a regular basis. And 6, upon completion of the independent firm's findings and when a final report of recommendations is prepared for action, that report shall become a voting item for the BOS, BOF, and RTM. Let it further be resolved that 1, the independent firm should be interviewed and chosen by the entire BOS and not the First Selectman. 2, appropriate department heads should assist with writing the request for services, and that request should be voted upon by the entire BOS so that public input can be sought. 3, department head liaison to the independent firm shall be the conservation director, who shall also report to the entire Board of Selectmen on this matter. 4, moving forward, any public meetings held by independent firms shall include the department head liaison and the entire BOS, not just the First Selectman. In addition, the BOS shall request that these meetings be recorded by FairTV and, whenever possible, presented live on FairTV. And funding for the independent firm shall be requested through all proper charter required channels. Is there a motion to approve? Moved by Representative Iacono, seconded by Representative Wall. Is there any discussion on this item? Representative Wackerman.
Karen Wackerman, District 7. The Democratic Caucus was actually very happy to see this proposal come in that it echoes many of the things that we asked for in our letter to the Board of Selectmen. And this week I had some really good conversations with the minority leader, and we saw a lot of common ground between our two proposals. I think the thing that we find as a caucus to be most important is that this be run by an independent, non-political commission and not the Board of Selectmen. And I think it's very important to everybody in the town to know that this is being reviewed in a clean, apolitical way. We like the idea of the independent firm that was suggested by the Minority Caucus, and we've got some amendments to suggest to add that. But we feel very strongly that this needs to come out of the Board of Selectmen and be dealt with in an independent commission of citizens of Fairfield. And that will make the town, the people in town, feel that it's really been handled appropriately.
Further discussion on the item, represented by Icono.
Thank you, Pamela Iacono, District 8 Minority Leader, and I want to thank Majority Leader Wackerman. We've been colleagues now in this session for 2 years, and I was extremely grateful when the phone call came through and she said, we would like to work with you on this proposal. And I think what came out of that conversation is that we all recognize that we're in a situation that I would say is almost unprecedented, in the fact that something needs to be done and there needs to be oversight into what happened with this aggregate fill pile, the things that took place, what broke down, and what happens next. And I think that we're all trying to work in the best interest of Fairfield to make that happen. We've tried to put together language that was reflective of that. I heard Representative Wackerman when she spoke to me about some of the wording of the language and her concerns. Our caucus feels very strongly that this needs to have an independent firm look at it. But in the interest of working together, I'd like to offer up a series of motions to try and get to places where we have language that everyone is more comfortable with the resolution. And I appreciate Majority Leader Wackerman reaching out to me to do that. It's the first time that that's happened in 2 years. I'm really glad it did. I'm hoping that this is the sentiment and a tone of where we need to be for the future of Fairfield, because I shouldn't have to stand up here and say that's the first time that happened. But I'm glad it did, and that's where we're going, and that's a great thing. So if something positive has come out of all this, and hopefully there'll be a resolution tonight, that, for right off the bat, was a wonderful, great thing, and I thank you, Karen, for it. I'd like to offer up an motion in the very first line where it says, whereas it is determined that the processes, policies, and procedures of the charter, I would like to insert the word and administrative regulations have broken down as related to the Fairfield aggregate fill pile. That's my first motion, to add that line, and administrative regulations.
Okay, is there a second for the motion? Seconded by Representative Hurley. Is there any discussion on the motion to amend the resolution to insert the words and administrative regulations after the word procedures in the first line? Any discussion? Seeing none, is there anyone from the public that wishes to comment on the amendment, which is to add the words and administrative regulations to the first line of that whereas clause? Seeing none, we'll come back to the body for a vote. All those in favor, please signify by saying aye. Aye. All opposed? Any abstentions? Representative Wackerman? So that motion carries. I'm sorry, was there another abstention?
No.
Representative Smay?
I said no.
Voted no, okay. So Representative Smay voted no, Representative Wackerman abstained.
Should I just stand if it's easier if I do it soon?
You can present them in a series, that's fine.
Thank you. The second motion I would like to offer is to delete, whereas the consensus that the powers to investigate and administer oversight into an investigation should no longer reside with the first selectman, but instead with an independent firm that shall report to the Board of Selectmen, and let it herefore be resolved. I'd like to strike that and insert, whereas it is in the best interest of the town of Fairfield to examine the facts around the dumping of hazardous waste at the Fairfield aggregate fill pile and the possible use of that fill in parks, fields, playgrounds, and other areas around Fairfield, despite the fact that this fill is inappropriate for such use, and whereas the Board of Selectmen have the power to investigate any and all town offices, departments, and agencies of the town, let it herefore be resolved that.
Do you have a copy of that?
I do, sure.
I'm
I'm sorry, and I gave copies to my majority leader, but I have extra copies.
Okay. So is there a second for that motion? I think I have a copy. Second by Representative Hurley.
Just share them if you don't mind.
Okay, so it's been moved and seconded. The item, the motion to amend is to insert after the first whereas clause, to delete that clause and insert a second whereas clause that says, whereas it is in the best interest of the town of Fairfield to examine the facts around the dumping of hazardous waste at the Fairfield aggregate fill pile and the possible use of that fill in parks, fields, playgrounds, and other areas around Fairfield, despite the fact that such fill is inappropriate for such use. That the fill is inappropriate for such use. Is there any discussion on this proposed amendment? Seeing none, is there any comment from the public on the motion before the body, which is an amendment to replace that whereas clause? Seeing none, we'll come back to the body for a vote. All those in favor, please signify by saying aye. Aye. All opposed? Representative Smay, Representative Newman, Representative Wolf. Any abstentions? Okay, so that amendment carries.
My next amendment is under let it further be resolved. Number 1, delete the words BOS, not the first selectman, and insert. The independent firm should be interviewed and chosen by the entire three-member body of the Board of Selectmen.
Is there a second for that motion? Seconded by Representative Hurley. Is there any discussion on the amendment to revise the first, I guess it's the second one in the resolution, to read the independent firm should be interviewed and chosen by the entire three-member body of the Board of Selectmen? Is there any discussion on that item? Representative Gale? Is there discussion?
Representative Hannah Gale from District 6. In our caucus, we were discussing that the issues here are in various fields. There's not just one. We can't imagine that there'd be one firm that would have the skill set to be able to address the multiple concerns that are around this issue. I can't imagine that one really exists. And so the idea that there is this ideal firm out there that can completely fulfill our needs just doesn't seem practical. And that is why the Democratic proposal is that there be some sort of a commission that sort of acts as a general contractor, and that because there may in fact need to be several firms or individuals that are hired in order to meet the needs that we might have as this investigation unfolds.
Further discussion, Representative Burcham?
Carrie Burcham, District 8, through the moderator, more of a question than a discussion. Is this intended to mean the unanimous Board of Selectmen or majority of the Board of Selectmen?
I think, so
What does entire Board of Selectmen mean?
the proposal is it says the entire three-member body. So, I mean,
Do you mean
we can have
from
the
unanimous?
movement clarify the intention, but.
The intention was, in the conversation that I had with the majority leader, is that she thought that it was unfair that we were singling out the first selectman. In the original intent of the language was to make sure that the entire Board of Selectmen was involved in the process. So the intent is to have the Board of Selectmen do that, not the first selectman. However, in the interest of trying to be accommodating, and I changed the language there, if the intent is to have all three of them make that decision.
I just think that, I think you almost have to go to a majority for fear that
If
you
you
might
want it-
never get anything done, but that was just my concern.
So, yes, it would be the intent of that is by a majority vote of the Board of Selectmen.
Okay. Further discussion on that amendment, Representative Wackerman.
Karen Wackerman, District 7. I propose an amendment to the amendment to say that it would require the unanimous vote of the Board of Selectmen.
Okay, so is there a second for that motion? Second by Representative Messina. Okay, so, let's see. So I think the secondary amendment.
Mr. Moderator, I'd be happy to clarify and add in the word unanimous if that makes the
So,
process easier for you.
Does any member have an objection to amending the amendment to include the word unanimously at the end of the sentence? Seeing no objection, we'll consider the motion amended, and we'll return to the primary amendment, which is now before the body as this second one, below, let it be further resolved. The independent firm should be interviewed and chosen by the entire three-member body of the Board of Selectmen unanimously. I think that was is that the amendment?
Yes.
So that's the amendment for the body. Is there further discussion on that amendment, that proposed amendment? Representative Messina.
Christine Messina, District 8. To Representative Gale's point, I'd agree with that and suggest that perhaps we put an S, independent firms, in case more than one firm has to be retained to accomplish all of the tasks.
Okay, so I'm going to Representative Messina, I'm going to suggest that we make that as a separate motion because the term independent firm appears in several places throughout the resolution, so I think we should probably do a global change for that, and I think that should be a separate motion. I don't think it's a proper secondary amendment to the amendment that's before the body. But we can certainly consider that as the next amendment that we take up. Is there any discussion on the amendment that's before the body? Representative Hurley.
Michael Hurley, RTM District 10. I think this is a very important amendment. I'm really glad to see that support is beginning to build for having the committee report to the Board of Selectmen. I think it's very important. The Board of Selectmen is the town's executive committee. I think checks and balances in government are very important. I think one of the challenges, perhaps that led to the breakdown, was that there weren't enough checks and balances and protocols weren't in place. So I would just encourage everybody to support this amendment. So thank you.
Further discussion on the amendment? Representative Vergara.
Jill Vergara, District 7. I just wanted to make a clarification that the Board of Selectmen already has this power as an executive body, which that's why it doesn't make any sense to me to be putting this power in the Board of Selectmen. They've had this power, this investigative power, forever. It's in the charter, and they haven't used it. So that's why we're thinking that an independent commission is the more appropriate place to have this power, and a way to regain the public's trust is putting it in an independent commission that's completely apolitical and neutral.
Further discussion? So I kind of let Representative Hurley and Representative Vergara speak to the main substance of the motion, but we should try to confine the discussion to the specific amendment so that we can move the discussion forward. So is there any discussion on just the amendment, the proposed amendment?
Can you remind us?
So the amendment is as follows. Under let it be further resolved that it would read, the independent firm should be interviewed and chosen by the entire 3-member body of the Board of Selectmen unanimously. Is there any further discussion on that amendment? Seeing none, is there anyone from the public that wishes to speak on that specific amendment? Seeing none, we'll come back to the RTM for a vote. All those in favor, please signify by saying aye.
Aye.
All opposed? Representative Ambrose, Representative Havey. Any abstentions? Okay, so that amendment carries. I did, Representative Iacono, I did offer Representative Messina the ability to make that amendment.
I apologize.
Representative Messina, if you'd like to make that amendment.
Okay, so my amendment was, once again, to just add an S to the end of firm. And I was looking up towards the top. I think that paragraph, the Board of Selectmen shall contract with a credible outside independent firm, maybe firm or firms, and then parentheses, the S on the rest of firms throughout the body.
So the amendment, the proposed amendment is the first time it appears, it'll say firm or firms, and then globally, every time the word firm appears, it'll say firm, parenthesis, S, close parenthesis.
Correct.
Okay.
Thank
Is
you.
there a second for that motion? Second by Representative Newman. Is there any discussion on that motion to amend? Seeing none, is there anyone from the public that wishes to comment on that specific motion to amend to indicate independent firms as opposed to independent firm? Yes, sir.
Hello, my name is Douglas Price. I'm a resident of Fairfield, and I feel that by adding the S to independent firm, that you create the possibility for the contract, the purpose of this entire effort to become confused and to have multiple firms working at cross purposes. I think what would be more appropriate is to have a single firm be contracted to perform this work, and language inserted into this to allow them to hire subcontractors or consultants for specific tasks that are beyond their capability. I think that would actually allow for a better workflow and a more appropriate hierarchy of performing the tasks.
Does anyone else from the public wish to speak to the amendment before the body? Seeing none, we'll come back to the RTM for discussion. Representative Iacono.
I actually agree with the public speaker. The intent is to get a firm to manage the entire thing, and a subset of that could be that that firm does contract out with specialty. So I don't support the motion to add the S.
Further discussion. Representative Gerber.
Bill Gerber, District 2. Yeah, I like the idea of the independent firm. I think it's hard not to support it, in my opinion, but agree that there has to be flexibility to hire. I agree with the speaker who said that there is no, I think it was Representative Gale, there's no single firm with all the expertise necessary. I do have a question. I'm a little confused about what type of firm. It would be helpful in understanding what the wording should be if we knew a little bit more about what type of firm we're talking about and whether or not you have any sort of examples of actual firms that do this type of work. And that would help, because just looking at the description at the top under the, I think it's in the preamble. No, it's not. It said an independent firm that specializes in risk, crisis, and business continuity management, but then underneath it says conduct an operational audit, which wouldn't necessarily be included in the skill set that was discussed in the first sentence. So I think it would be helpful to get some clarity around what we want this firm to be, what their skill set is, before we vote on this amendment. So I guess I'm not sure who I'm asking, maybe Representative Iacono, if you could throw out maybe a couple examples, or, because I'm not really familiar with, I know of firms that do individually some of these things, and I'm not really clear if business continuity management is a major part of what we're actually talking about, because that's sort of after the fact. I think we're really looking at getting to the bottom of what happened and sort of putting changes in place to processes, so sort of on the operations side, putting changes in place that make sure it doesn't happen again. But the crisis and business continuity management is sort of, well, if it does happen again, then, so hopefully it won't. So if you could help me out with that, it would probably help with this amendment. What firm?
I mean, the amendment is to add an S or not add an S, but in answering that, if you look at it, you see that I'm asking the Board of Selectmen to work with the department heads to work in writing the request for services. I think that they need to use this as a framework in doing that. In terms of the language, that came from something that I Googled on CSNA, which happens to be a firm that specializes in that. I'm understanding that there are a limited number of firms that do these types of things. But I think that you need to give enough latitude to the Board of Selectmen to have the discretion to figure this out. Whoever is sitting on that 3-member body is going to be smart enough to figure out how to do this, especially when they get together with the appropriate department heads. They understand the scope of what we're looking for, and they ought to be able to then come up with this group of services and figure out the best way to do that. That's why you do a request for services.
Further discussion on the amendment? Oh, Representative Gerber, do you still? I'll let you have that.
So I think, I'm sorry, I think this is not an insignificant point, because I think we need to get this right. I don't think the description of the firm that we're talking about is appropriate for the work that we actually want them to do. And this could impact whether or not we actually want to make this amendment and take this route altogether. It's probably, there are a lot of elements to this that a risk management and crises management firm probably isn't appropriate to handle, especially the operations side of it. So that's my concern. I just wanted to voice that.
Further discussion on the amendment. Representative Pistilli.
I hate this. Sharon Pistilli, District 3. I still haven't grown tall enough to reach the microphone.
Still grab this.
Sorry. I can just bring a stool. I grab it, right?
There you go.
Okay. So
Yeah.
I agree with the amendment to include the S. I do agree with what the individual from the public had to say about hiring one firm to handle the whole thing. I do have 21 years of experience in professional services, and I personally don't know of a firm that does all of these things, because from my vantage point, we need stricter financial controls, we need stricter HR controls, including conflict of interest. We need annual conflict of interest training, and you have to sign an affidavit that you don't have conflict of interest. In addition, so there's a finance and HR element to it, which would not be the same as the public works and the environmental element. Those are two entirely different things. So while I agree that it would be great if there was one firm to do this, I think it's unlikely. Would love to be proven wrong, but from my knowledge of many different industries. I haven't seen it, so I agree with the letter S. That's it. Thanks. Sorry for the next person who has to use this.
I'll take care of it.
Okay.
I'll take care of it.
Yeah, it was about color.
Further discussion on the amendment from the RTM? Seeing none, we'll take a vote on the amendment. Again, the amendment is to replace, the first time independent firm appears, it shall say independent firm or firms, and then each subsequent time that independent firm appears, it will read independent firms. Firm, open parenthesis, S, close parenthesis. That's the proposed amendment. Thanks, Alex. So all those in favor of that proposed amendment, please signify by saying aye. Aye. All opposed? Represented by Iacono, Representative Herron, Representative Ritelli. Did I get it right? Sorry. Anyone else opposed? Any abstentions? Okay, so that amendment carries.
Thank you, Mr. Moderator. The next motion is on number 2, to insert the words "at a public meeting" after the words Board of Selectmen. The intent there is just to clarify that that's what that sentence is intending to mean.
Is there any discussion on the proposed amendment to add after entire BOS at a public meeting in the second 2 that appears below? Let it be further resolved that. Is there any discussion on that proposed amendment? Oh, sorry, is there a second for that motion? We need a second. Seconded by Representative Bovee. Is there any discussion on that item? Seeing none, is there anyone from the public that wishes to speak to that proposed amendment to add the words "at a public meeting"? Seeing none, we'll come back to the body. All those in favor, please signify by saying aye. Aye. All opposed? Any abstentions? Okay, that one carries.
Just 2 things left. The next one is insert the word "the" in front of department head, and it shall read, "The department head liaison to the independent firm shall be determined by unanimous vote of the Board of Selectmen, and the department head liaison shall report to the entire Board of Selectmen on the matter." That's striking the words "the conservation director." Upon further discussion, we determined that we're not the experts that should determine who the department head liaison should be, and that should be a decision of the Board of Selectmen.
Is there a second for that proposed amendment? Seconded by Representative Hurley. Is there any discussion on that proposed amendment from the RTM? Seeing none, we'll go to the public. Is there any discussion from the public on the proposed amendment to make that revision to paragraph 3 so that it reads, "The department head liaison to the independent firm shall be determined by unanimous vote of the Board of Selectmen, and the department head liaison shall report to the entire Board of Selectmen on this matter"? Seeing none, we'll come back to the body for a vote. All those in favor, please signify by saying aye. Aye. All opposed? Representative Gale? Any abstentions? Motion carries.
Thank you. The final one is moving forward that any public, insert the word "community meetings," insert the word "and/or forums" held by the independent firm shall include the department head liaison and all 3 members of the Board of Selectmen. In addition, the Board of Selectmen shall request that these meetings be recorded by FairTV. So it's inserting the word "community" in between "public" and "meetings," and inserting the words "and/or forums held by the independent forum," and it's to ensure the intent that all 3 members of the Board of Selectmen are included. In speaking again with the majority leader, I think there was confusion about the business meetings versus public forums. This is to intend that if there was an assembly of a public forum, that all members be included in that forum, not just the first selectman or just a department head, that all 4 of those people have an opportunity to participate in a public forum Q&A type of thing. That's the intent of the language there.
Okay, is there a second for that amendment? Seconded by Representative Hurley. Is there any discussion on the proposed amendment? Seeing no discussion from the RTM, we'll go to the public. Again, the proposed amendment is an amendment to let it be further resolved that numbered paragraph 4, moving forward, any public community meetings and/or forums held by independent firm or firms shall include the department head liaison and all 3 members of the Board of Selectmen. In addition, the BOS shall request that these meetings be recorded by FairTV and whenever possible presented live on FairTV, and that's how that paragraph would read. So any discussion from the public on that proposed amendment? Seeing none, we'll return to the body for a vote. All those in favor, please signify by saying aye. Aye. All opposed? Any abstentions? Motion carries.
Thank you, Mr. Moderator.
Okay, further discussion on the item as amended that is presently before the body. Representative Garskow.
Thank you, Mr. Moderator. Josh Garskoff from District 5. This is labeled as a resolution. Do we have the power to tell the Board of Selectmen what to do in a resolution? I was thinking it would be a sense of the body maybe, but.
So I think it's a point of order as to our body's power to do this.
Yes, thank you.
So I think the answer is it's a advisory resolution, it's a sense of the body resolution under RTM Rule to Regulate, Rule 34, I believe. That requires a 2/3 majority to pass.
Do we need to amend the language to do that, or is it fine the way it is?
I don't think so.
Okay, thank you.
Representative Icahn.
Pamela Iacono, District 8. Mr. Moderator, through you to Representative Garskoff, thank you for that question. That's why our resolution starts with to consider and act upon the following resolution submitted to this section 4.3-C of the Charter to be presented to the First Selectman with a request that the item be afforded a discussion and a vote for adoption by the First Selectman. The policies and procedures involved in at the Board of Selectmen are that the First Selectman sets the agenda. So it's our intent that we're requesting that the First Selectman take this resolution and place it on an agenda for a discussion and possible vote. We don't have the authority to make them put it on an agenda. We don't have the authority to make them vote on it, hence the language that says to be presented to.
Further discussion on the item before the body. Representative Vergara.
Jill Vergara, District 7. I entered this meeting really nervous and also really excited at the prospect of coming together and compromising as a group together, all of us. The Republican caucus's proposal to hire a crisis management firm is a good one, and it's an important addition to the Democrats' proposal. When I signed on to the Democratic caucus's letter 2 weeks ago, I did so with the hope that the commission would not only hire an LEP to review the environmental tests and findings, but also that the commission would hire a crisis management firm like what the Republicans are asking for to review the town's procedures with the aim to fix what failed. I think it's a really good idea to explicitly incorporate it, and I wish I could support this proposal, but I can't because it's missing a very fundamental feature for me. Independence is a key and critical element to our proposal, and I feel strongly that to restore all people's trust, we must have a completely independent body doing this work. One of the greatest harms to the town resulting from this crisis is the loss of public trust in our government. An independent commission creates a neutral body to review and analyze the failures that occurred. Independence is essential to regaining trust and being able to move forward for everyone. I'd really like to compromise. I really want to try to get this together and get our heads together and combine the Republicans' proposal to have to be hiring a crisis management firm, which I really do see as an important piece of this. But I'd also like for our element of having an independent commission review this incorporated. this is a moment where we could all really pull together and do something good for the town, and I hope that we can come together with a compromise, but I just can't support the proposal the way it is.
Further discussion on the item, Representative Hurley?
Michael Hurley, RTM District 10. I stand before you tonight in full support of this important resolution. I, like many Fairfielders, feel betrayed by what has transpired in our town. I think a big part of the problem is the result of checks and balances not being followed. Specifically, the contract for Julian was never brought forth to the Board of Selectmen for approval. This is inconsistent with our town charter. The process broke down. This is why the independent firm must report to the Board of Selectmen, so it's consistent with our town charter. I think the Democrat proposal has the best intentions, but I think we need to have a proposal that is consistent and addresses some of the shortcomings of what took place. And I really hope that we, like Representative Vergara said, we can come together. And I think the best way we come together is by supporting this resolution, which most of my Democratic colleagues supported the amendments to. So I think we can come together tonight. We have a terrific resolution in front of us, and I think we need to have a degree of faith in the Board of Selectmen, the town's executive body, of which the first selectman is the chairman of that body, to be able to oversee this independent firm that's going to do the hard work, the top to bottom of analysis of really what transpired with the fill pile. So I hope everyone can come together and support this resolution in a unanimous fashion and put Fairfield first. Thank you.
Further discussion on the item, Representative Wackerman?
Karen Wackerman, District 7. I know that we've said this several times already, but it's very important to us that this be an independent, non-political group that runs this. We've seen the last 2 months what happens when it's the Board of Selectmen's job to handle it. They haven't done anything. There's just been a lot of yelling, and the town deserves to know what happened. They deserve to see change where change is required. And the only way I think that can be clearly done so that in a way that everyone feels comfortable is to have it be a non-political party, a non-political commission. One of the amendments we're going to recommend, and this was a result of talking with the minority leader, is that the commission be formed with 2 people from each party and an unaffiliated person, and the Board of Selectmen would have to unanimously approve them. So the idea is to have no party loyalties and have it just be people who want to figure out what happened and how to fix it. So I admire many aspects of this proposal, but I really think it falls short in that there needs to be an independent commission.
Further discussion on the item? So I have Representative Horton, Gale, and then Herron, and then Still-A. That's the order. So we've got a queue, but yes, you're next.
Margaret Horton, District 9. So first of all, I think we actually agree more than we disagree. I think that we've all come together tonight because we are concerned, because we do want to put Fairfield first, because we do need to regain, the public trust and really understand kind of what happened here with this fill pile. I've heard tonight things about putting Fairfield first, faith in our government, regaining trust, checks and balances, all of this. To me, the only way that we can truly do this is to have an independent, bipartisan commission. Otherwise, I think that it falls too much into the political sphere, and I think the whole point is to move us out of that, to investigate this. I'm having trouble understanding why everyone wouldn't want a bipartisan commission, because I think it truly is the only way to move forward with this.
Okay, so I have Representative Gale next. Have a comment?
Representative Gale, District 6. So I am concerned about this language that of there being this one department head liaison. And I see that there was a specific person that was deleted. And my concern about that is I just, Googling my head off here, looking at what best practices are from around the country where local government audits have been studied, and I'm looking through several public policy forums on it. There seems to always be seen as a need for some sort of committee, an audit committee in the employees, and instead of there being, so I guess I'm sort of suggesting something new, that instead of there being just this one department liaison head, that there actually be some sort of a committee formed of the people who are already employed by the town, instead of there being one head. And that might satisfy this desire that that might serve as a place where we could come together. So I don't know if I'm supposed to be bringing up something new, but I guess my concern is just that there is this one liaison in this proposal, and I think that that is not according to what best practices are in this regard. Thank you.
Okay, so next I had Representative Herron.
Hi, Doreen Herron, District 9. I urge you to support this resolution because it's already going to be bipartisan because we just voted for it to be a unanimous vote of the Board of Selectmen. So it's not going to be a one-party Board of Selectmen. There's already going to be Democrats and Republicans on it. So I don't think it's necessary to add another layer of bureaucracy when we're already offering public forums, public meetings. It's going to be all transparent at that time. So I understand the sentiment, but I don't think it's necessary. So I urge you to support this.
Next I have Representative Pistilli, if you still have a comment.
Sharon Pristilli, District 3. So when we think about the genesis of this, the original idea that came from the Democratic caucus was, that we would form an independent commission, and from the Republican caucus, it is that we would hire an independent firm. So if we want to see true compromise between our two parties, my suggestion is that we blend our two ideas together in a structure that would work so that we all walk away feeling like we've contributed something to the better of our town, which is the actual reason why we all ran for office to begin with.
So next I think I had Representative Gerber. I don't know if you guys did see a hand. And then next, Representative Messina, did you have your hand up before? No, it was early? Okay. Sorry about that.
Bill Gerber, District 2. I just want to be clear. My opinion is that and I think most of my colleagues' opinion is that the charter gives the Board of Selectmen the power to do much of what's in this resolution they could have done without our urging, but didn't. So this is essentially asking them to do something they could have done all along, but hadn't. And if I'm wrong on that, someone please come up and correct me. The elections are coming up. There's a chance we could have as many as 3 new members of the Board of Selectmen, but at the least it's going to be 2 of the 3 are going to be new. 4 years after that, it could be 3 new people. The Board of Selectmen certain selectmen will be able to influence what the independent firm will be working for the Board of Selectmen, and the majority of the Board of Selectmen will be able to influence what they do. We've had examples of this in the past. We had a commission, or we had an independent review of what happened with the Metro Center, and I think when that report came out from an independent firm, there was some skepticism by some members of the Republican Party. It was, sort of a Democratic-led Board of Selectmen at that time. And we shouldn't have any skepticism about what comes out from this commission. This commission should, what should be a commission in our view, should put something out that no one can doubt is tainted by politics. So, if someone can tell me that the Board of Selectmen didn't have the power to force, an independent firm, hiring of an independent firm to start work, maybe I would change my mind. But I don't think we're giving them any rights that they haven't had and haven't exercised. And I get it. They're busy. We have one full-time person, but the other two are part-time. They've got day jobs. So for continuity and for lack of partisanship, to me, it's sort of it's pretty obvious that an independent commission is the way to go. That's basically all I have to say, but thank you.
Representative Hurley, I have you next. Michael Hurley, RTM District 10. I know that we have a lot of dedicated volunteers in our town who give their time to serving on committees, and they make their best effort to do what's best for the town. I think we do that here on the RTM. We have various building committees related to school projects. I think we've all seen the various cost overruns over the years. We have some potential overruns related coming out of the Golf Commission. As it relates to the Fairfield Metro Commission, that was a creation of the RTM, and I was one of the members who served on that commission, or actually that committee, which was a creation of the RTM. But I think of one of the more recent committees that was formed, which was related to the Penfield Building Committee. The Penfield, I'm usually not missing words, but related to Penfield. And it really was comprised of some really terrific individuals. But I think we all know where we are now with Penfield. We're facing potential $4 million shortfall. And to say that we should have an independent committee because we don't want them to be influenced by politics, I think anyone who potentially lives in town and is involved in the committee and talks to people in town, it is going to be potentially influenced, to some degree, and to not acknowledge that, I think is not being, completely honest, during the debate. And, $4 million potential shortfall, related to a FEMA reimbursement of Penfield is a big deal. And, perhaps if, we had hired professionals for that, we would be in a different place. Now, I'm not putting blame on anyone for that. Hindsight is always, 20/20 vision. But I think, perhaps there are some important lessons. And, again, I also want to go back to the fact, as it relates to, the Philpile matter, the Julian RFP, is supposed to have been presented, to the Board of Selectmen, and it was not, and that's inconsistent with the town charter. And from a charter perspective,
I think we need to allow these checks and balances, to be followed. And the way we do that is, by having, faith in our Board of Selectmen. I mean, the first selectman, Michael C. Tetro, he is the chairman of the Board of Selectmen. And to say that the Board of Selectmen is, not able to, provide overview or interact with an independent firm, and we're going to have potentially a totally new Board of Selectmen. I think we're showing an absolute lack of faith in government, and I think it's a very, very, very bad precedent, for this body. So I really urge everyone to think deeply about the message you're sending to the town's executive committee, that you have absolutely no faith that they can oversee an independent firm looking into the matter of the fill pile. Is that the message you want to send?
So I think I saw Representative Lefkowitz, and then I have Representative Jacobs, and then I have Burcham. And then we'll get to you, Hans.
Nancy Lefkowitz, District 1, and I want to echo the sentiment of Representative Herron. The word unanimous is really important to me. I think the town elects a body, and the fact that this will be a bipartisan body, and I agree if there's a way, as Representative Pastilli is saying, if there's a way to incorporate some sort of citizen component to that, I would be open to that. But to me, the idea of unanimous is the thing that, for me, it allows this to be a bipartisan effort, and the community will be voting in a few weeks and putting their faith in people. And I think it's important, as Representative Hurley just said, that we try to restore faith in our government. And then the other point I just wanted to make is that, again, with what Representative Hurley just said, the part-time work of citizen commission, a citizen independent commission, it's hard when people are juggling a lot, when it is the mandate of our executive body to make sure that this is, that they're held accountable. Yes, while it may be a mandate that they have the power to exercise, I feel that this is renewed vigor, renewed purpose, specific agenda, and I am actually closer to being in favor. Perhaps there is a way to discuss, as Representative Pastilli suggested, but again, I come back to the word unanimous, and that makes me feel a lot more comfortable. Thank you.
Representative Jacobs, did you saw something?
Matt Jacobs, District 3. I actually am rethinking what I was going to say based on Representative Lefkowitz's comments. I do think Representative Hurley is absolutely correct that checks and balances are very important here. I do think that an independent commission made up of citizens should be an important component of that, but I think the way it was suggested potentially by Representative Pastilli and Lefkowitz could be a way to accomplish that. I do want to put some of the power to investigate this in the hands of our citizens. I do understand the point that, yes, day jobs, but I think we have a lot of talented people who are very fired up about this issue who would really put in the time and energy to get this done. I do think there's precedent in the charter, precedent in our town for an independent commission like this. FairTV is an example of one. The Ethics Commission is an example of another that are nonpartisan or complete bipartisan commissions. So we do have precedents there. And I do think continuity is very important. Given that we are going to have turnover on these bodies over the years, I think having a group of people with less turnover who could act as the general contractor to hire these independent firms and manage that process, or at least oversee it in conjunction with the Board of Selectmen, I think that would be a suggestion, kind of combining the two, that would make a lot of sense. Thank you.
Representative Burcham? No. Before we get, so I don't have any hands in the queue, but is there anyone who has not yet spoken to the item that wishes to speak before I get to repeat speakers? Representative Durrell.
All right. Can you hear me? Yes. All right, Alex Durrell, RTM 3. A couple of years ago, I was at a football game at Ludlow. I think it was their winless season, if I remember right. Hard to believe. And a voice said, "Alex, come over here." And I went over, and it was an elected official in town, a Democrat, and that person wanted to introduce me to the superintendent of school, the new one. And so the three of us were talking, and what this individual said, we got into a discussion about commissions and committees. And what this gentleman said, and I'll never forget it, is town officials like commissions and committees because when something goes wrong, everybody can go like this and blame someone else, and nothing happens. I think this would be the same if we had another level. So basically, to quote a little bit of what Representative Herron, whose daughter scored the winning goal tonight, I believe. Thank you. To paraphrase her, more layers of bureaucracy mean less accountability, less action, and more claims of being blameless when things go wrong. A professional, independent firm impartially gives us recommendations and hopefully results, which we need. Thank you.
Any discussion from a member who has not already spoken to the issue? Okay, any discussion from repeat speakers? I have Representative Hurley and then Representative Wackerman.
Michael Hurley, RTM District 10. Just in response to my colleague, Representative Jacobs, talking about citizens having a say in the process. Here we have in Fairfield and in this country a representative form of democracy. We're representatives of the people. We have 10 districts. We represent the interests of our people in the districts. So is the same of the people who are elected to the Board of Selectmen. So, yes, the people and the citizens do have representation by the Board of Selectmen and by the RTM. So, from my standpoint, that representation is there, and not to sort of bring up sort of the obvious, but in a few weeks they will also have, their say as it relates to well, not all of us, because I'm not running for the RTM, but for all of you. And then secondly, someone else brought up the FairTV Commission. And Jim Kennelly spent a tremendous amount of time on that ordinance, and he did an awesome job on that piece of legislation working with the RTM. And what's so good about that ordinance is that the Board of Selectmen, if I'm correct, has to unanimously approve the members who are appointed to the commission. And it's been brilliant. I mean, the FairTV Commission has been so independent and fair in how it's operated. And sort of the addition of that element to sort of the unanimous consent of the Board of Selectmen in terms of this independent commission, I think it solves everything. So I think this is completely awesome. I think, the consensus, the support for this, resolution is building. So folks, I think we're there. Let's approve this.
Representative Wackerman and then Representative Burcham.
Karen Wackerman, District 7. I just wanted to clarify one thing. There's been a couple of comments about how this would be, unanimity would be involved in this plan, and that's not true, really. The only thing that where unanimity is discussed is choosing the firm, the independent firm. That would be a unanimous vote of the board. Everything else the Board of Selectmen did in connection with this would not be unanimous. So there is that political aspect. Just wanted to clarify that.
Representative Burcham.
Carrie Burcham, District 8. I came into this not knowing which way to go, candidly. I'm a part of the Democratic caucus. But I ran for the RTM 2 years ago because I really like this community. And I'm kind of sickened by where we're going with some of this. I mean, when we started this, Representative Iacono sort of like calling out Wackerman for not having done this before. This issue impacts our entire community. It's not a political issue. I am actually persuaded by Representative Durrell's comment about accountability. We should have accountability. Elected officials should have accountability. I liked the independent commission because they don't have to run for election, okay? So that's why we're in this mess. We have people running for election. We have people who think that they're on FairTV in order to become like, I don't know. We don't live in DC. We live in Fairfield, Connecticut. We should be fair to one another. We should trust each other. But Representative Hurley, the fact is we don't trust each other, okay? That's what's happened here. None of us seem to trust public government. And Selectman Timniak, I mean, what are we doing here? We're trying to get to the bottom of this hazardous issue. It's toxic to all of us. I'm ready to go with the Republican amended vote just to get there. Let's just get there and stop calling each other out and get up here on political podiums. It's just, it's wrong. It's wrong.
Further discussion on the item. Representative, please hold your applause. Representative Mahoney.
Hi, I'm Mike Mahoney, and I'm in District 1 and relatively new to this, but I think what, so I was sort of hearing a lot of stuff going on here, and I can agree with a lot, but we're all residents of this great town, and I believe that we all want what's in the best interest of the town. And I keep hearing independent commission, but I guess I'm confused, because if we're hiring an independent agency to answer to us, the one word I'm not hearing here is transparency. I think that we're all looking for transparency. Give us the facts, let us make the decision. So if we have an independent firm giving us the facts, then we should be able to make our own decisions. And I would hope that the citizens would also appreciate that. I agree with someone who made the comment about adding another layer of bureaucracy. I mean, to add another committee, who picks the committee, how are they picked? I heard, non-political, political. At the end of the day, if we're hiring someone to give us the facts and they don't have any affiliation with the town, then we should be able to make those decisions accordingly. And I'm just going to leave it at that. But I would say that we're looking for transparency. Thank you.
Further discussion on the item, Representative Pistilli.
We're a group of people who all want what's best for the town, and it would be great if we can compromise.
Further discussion on the item, Representative Gale.
So I have been part of just an accreditation process before, and I'm familiar with what self-study is when you have, in this case, the problems that led to this situation are not just in one person. There was clearly a problem in the culture of the employees that work in our town. So part of any investigation to get to the bottom of what happened is going to have to include some form of self-study of what happened in the employee culture in our town. And that is why I would really like to see some sort of an amendment to this idea of there being one liaison, because I don't think that that is going to be helpful. I think that we actually want to create some sort of a structure right here for the town employees to participate in the audit. I mean, one of the things that happened is there were a lot of people who knew a lot of things, and nothing got brought forward because there was an issue with the culture. So I would really like to see, instead of the word, I guess this is in 4, number 4? Instead of the word department liaison, that there be like a liaison to the audit committee of of what, however that is formed, of multiple departments participating in an audit committee, and there be a liaison from that committee to the Board of Selectmen. So.
Is that a motion?
So my motion is to amend the wording to replace the wording department head liaison to liaison from a proposed audit committee of employees.
So, okay, so.
So liaison, instead of department head liaison, because my concern there, again, is that there was a problem where the employees could not get their information past their department heads. So I would like to see there be some sort of a committee of the employees, and there be a liaison from that committee, not that there be a department head, a top-down thing set up from the very beginning. Does that clear? Does everyone get what I'm saying?
Point of
no.
clarification of the motion.
It's okay. So
what is the committee that?
So my concern is, in this proposal, there is one person, a department head liaison, right, who is going to report to the Board of Selectmen. And what I am suggesting is that instead of that, the wording simply be liaison from the audit committee. And I'm suggesting that there be an audit committee of the employees.
Okay, so can you restate the motion so that it's proper before the body?
Sure. So my motion is to replace the term department head liaison with liaison from employee audit committee.
Is there a second for the motion?
No. Okay.
Seeing no second, the motion dies. Further discussion on the item? Representative Beauvais? Go to somebody that hasn't spoken.
Representative Beauvais from the 7th District. I'd just like to express one brief moment of appreciation that both sides have worked together really hard. I know I heard about it, and I think our sides are closer than this conversation might let on. The sticking point I have with this particular plan, I don't even want to call it Republican or Democrat, this first plan to vote on, is that only the initial choosing of the independent firm is unanimous. I think the rest of the votes for the Board of Selectmen would be not unanimous, and I'd like to see that change. Thank you.
Further discussion on the item? Representative Gerber?
Bill Gerber, District 2. I have a couple questions on the proposal. One is the public meetings. Who is, I mean, have we ever had an independent firm run a public meeting and have sort of the power to sort of run it and determine who to call and who can speak and all that kind of stuff? Have we had that before? Is that the intention, for the independent firm to actually be the one to run the meeting?
Representative Iacono, you want to respond?
The answer to that question is yes. Look at the superintendent search firm. You hire a superintendent search firm, they hold a forum, they take public comment. I think we're getting stuck in the weeds. We're here to address an issue. It was a breakdown.
I'm sorry, point of order. I asked the question and you're going,
I know, but we're getting stuck in the weeds. I think we need to act upon the resolution and let this be decided where it actually action can take place, and that's at the Board of Selectmen table.
Yeah, my other question is, who decides when the work of this independent firm is done? And this goes to the question that I have about having the Board of Selectmen run this process. First of all, I take exception to what my friend Representative Hurley said about trusting the Board of Selectmen to do their job. The Board of Selectmen has not jumped into this matter because, I guess, because they're busy. We're going to make them a lot busier. Their meetings are full. You have to, sit in a meeting sometimes for hours to get to a point where it's something of interest to you, the reason that you're there. If we have a commission, we know a couple of things. One is they're not going to end their work because there's a budget crisis or because the state has a demand on the town that we didn't have before, and all of a sudden there's some motivation to make it go away because we want to save $1 million. Regardless of who gets elected as first selectman, there is going to be, and I predict it right now, there's going to be pressure to end this before we know. We want to know what happened. We want to know where all the contaminated soil went. We want to know why it happened to begin with. And this could go on for years. I hate to say it. So are we going to feel comfortable that this next Board of Selectmen, the one after that, is going to not just say, oh, we're done. I think we've seen enough. And I don't think that's what the people want. Okay, so that's why I want an independent commission. So, and I think in our independent commissions dive into matters. I mean, to say that the Board of Selectmen, to imply that the Board of Selectmen could have rebuilt Penfield, I mean, those are hours and hours and hours of meetings over years and years. That would not have happened. Okay, that's what I thought you were implying, Michael, because these commissions, they dive in deep, and they're long, arduous meetings sometimes. So I just don't think, I predict it right now, that this idea that the Board of Selectmen is going to do this, I think it's a fantasy, okay? I think we're talking about a matter, and I think my fellow Democrats, at least, I believe we believe this is a big enough matter that requires people that are going to dive in, go deep, and do it for as long as it takes to get the answers. That's just not going to happen with the Board of Selectmen running this. So I urge, I mean, this is not a big point of difference. I do not understand why I'm not seeing some give on this. Explain it to me. Thank you.
Further discussion from members of the body? Representative Hurley?
Michael Hurley, RTM District 10. I'm back at the mic just to clarify some of the misstatements by the previous speaker. I never said that the Board of Selectmen should be managing the rebuild of Penfield Pavilion. That was talking about having an independent firm to be responsible for that. I thought I was pretty clear on that. And in terms of the roles and the responsibilities of the Board of Selectmen, it's the independent firm that would be doing the top to bottom analysis here. That's why we would be paying them to do it, because they would have the resources to roll up their sleeves and get into the nitty-gritty as to what transpired, and then they would be reporting in to the town's executive body, the Board of Selectmen. And again, I will say, I still have faith in our town government. I understand some of the dynamics on the Board of Selectmen. This is the representative town meeting. This is the town's legislative body. We can send a message that this is what the people want, and hopefully it can be adopted by the Board of Selectmen in the weeks and/or the months to come. I hope we can rally together, and I hope we can keep things at a civil tone when we come to the mic. Thank you.
Representative Wall?
Jay Walt, District 5. So I haven't heard one person get up to this microphone and say anything to the contrary to that. All I'm hearing from the town residents is blaming our first selectman for this whole thing. I'm seeing signs going up, free toxic waste, call Mike Tetro. I see people throwing things at Mike's house on his cars. Not one person is even mentioning this. This is all stemmed back, and it is political, way political. Nobody's saying that. Everybody's not defending our first selectman, saying I've been reading people on social media saying to me that Mike knew everything. It's all his fault. It's not his fault. I'm fuming right now. I've been on this RTM, if I get elected again.
Order, Mr. Moderator, he's not speaking to the item, and he's over.
I am speaking to.
So, Representative Wall, make sure that you direct your.
Okay. So why don't we go back to Representative Hurley's comment about.
Point of order, he's calling out a specific.
I'm pointing out what you said.
Member in a derogatory manner.
It's not a derogatory manner, Mr. Hurley.
He's raising his voice.
Right, so,
It's not.
Hold on.
Okay.
Representative Wall, hold on. So there's a point of order raised. I don't think he said anything derogatory yet. He can make reference to a comment that you made. He can't say anything negative about you, but I don't think he's done
Right.
that.
I would never say anything negative about you, Michael.
Thank you, Jay.
I wouldn't.
Thank you.
About what you said about FairTV is a different issue. So, why don't we go back to the point of order? So why are we all against having an independent counsel to look into this matter? First of all, I think our first selectman has already hired, the selectman's office hired a firm to look into this. I'm not sure if that firm is capable of taking on the rest of this. Our first selectman and our selectmans have looked into this to try to fix this problem. So anyway, I'll end it on this. I think an independent counsel will take a lot of pressure off of this first selectman's and the selectmen's, and I think it's a good idea to do this. Thank you.
Representative Jacobs, did you have something?
Matt Jacobs, District 3. I just want to be clear. I don't think anyone in our caucus is against the hiring of an independent firm to do a lot of this work. It's a matter of who they report to. You know, there has been some breakdown of basically how we got here in the first place, and so I think it's really important that we hire this firm to do this work. We had someone talk about kind of the workflow and the general contractor. I envision the independent commission to be the general contractor who manages the firms who are doing the work so we can get to the bottom of this. In the interest of transparency, having the information go to a group of citizens, I think, is the best way to make sure the information gets out there, and we can guarantee it's already in the hands of the citizens. There's no chance it can be changed after that. 2 Republicans, 2 Democrats, and an unaffiliated voter is in the Democratic proposal. We already have our commission structured the same way FairTV was, as you praise them. They are a great commission, and our proposal structures the independent commission the same way FairTV is purposefully. So I agree with the idea of having an independent firm do this work. We need a professional, we need a group of professionals, we need, however many need to figure out answers here. It's a matter of who they report to and who manages the workflow. We are really, really close here. I think we are so close in getting this done. I would take everything in the Republican proposal, and then the first line of reporting would go from the firms doing the work to the independent commission, or 2 lines, one to the commission and one to the Board of Selectmen. But that information does need to go to a group of the citizens directly.
Further discussion on the item? Representative Lefkowitz.
With Nancy Lefkowitz, District 1, with respect to my colleagues, when the house is on fire, you don't stand around and ask who has the matches, you try to put out the fire. And I feel like we're here tonight trying to put out a fire and talking about the why. That's exactly why we're trying to come up with a resolution tonight. And I think we don't get different if we don't demand it, and it's going to be the job of this body to make sure that the Board of Selectmen is doing what they are set out to do. And I think we're grossly underestimating public sentiment on this issue if we think that they are not going to be actively engaged and involved. We see that here tonight. So I just encourage us, my colleague, Representative Gerber made the comment about the give. I feel like this is part of the give, is coming up and agreeing to a plan that maybe we didn't walk into the room with, but with some of these compromises. Again, what Representative Jacobs just suggested, perhaps there is a way so that we can satisfy everybody in the room, but I just encourage us to really reflect on what the give means in this instance.
Further discussion from members of the body? I saw hands from Representative Pastilli and Representative Iacono. I think both of you have spoken twice on the main motion. You definitely spoke at least once because you made the motions. If you haven't spoken twice, no.
Let her go. No, go ahead. I yield the
Representative Iacono, no, Representative Pastilli, I know spoke twice because I have it written down. So if you have not spoken twice, you have the floor. We're just trying to somewhat restrict the debate so we don't debate endlessly.
We have nothing if we don't have this. It's our town charter, it's what guides us, and it's what's going to lead our future. I cannot thank Representative Lefkowitz enough for recognizing the importance of this. We are going into an election, and that election is going to be decided by the people. And what we're doing tonight is letting that next Board of Selectmen, it's the next Board of Selectmen, guys, know that we're watching and we want the charter, this, our sacred document, to be valued. And in outlining every single thing that should have, could have, would have happened on that piece of paper, it's telling them, we read this, we get it, we know, and we want you to be held accountable. It's what you get paid to do. And there'll be an election that tells the people of this town who they want to lead them. And then it's our job to make sure that this is followed. While a group of residents, volunteers, is well-meaning, they are accountable to no one except the Board of Selectmen. They aren't accountable to me, they aren't accountable to you, they aren't accountable to the public. They are well-meaning citizens who, I assure you, will have a giant headache when they realize what they have signed on for. Not to mention the time, effort, and energy it is going to take to find these individuals, to interview them, to determine what their qualifications are, and to appoint them. It's simply slowing down the process. All of this was meant with good intent. I was complimenting the majority leader. I was complimenting all of us coming together. I don't think it makes sense for any of us to put any type of dig on one another at all. I stated what happened, I stated the good parts of it, and I stated the great things that can happen after that. I urge all of you to pass this resolution the way we worked on it right now, and to make all of us as elected officials accountable to this, because this is what we were elected to uphold. This is what we were elected to do. And if you haven't read it, I highly recommend you do it. It's an incredible resource of information. And every time I question what is going on, I go back and I look at this thing and I say, what does this say? We need to do more of that. All of us, not just elected officials, the public too, so they know. And I really, really encourage you to send a message right now that we're going to read this, and we're going to tell the public to read it, and we're going to tell our officials who are getting paid to execute this to use it. Because that's what the people who wrote it meant it to be. So please, let's not get caught in the weeds. Let's move this along. Let's send a message to the Board of Selectmen, whoever may be sitting on it, that this is what the people want, that this is what we heard. And that's actually why we called this meeting. We got, using the charter, followed the rules to put forward a meeting to have a discussion. That was the intent. And I heard a lot of subterfuge all over the place about what this meeting was. I know what it was. It was an opportunity to have a discussion because we're the representative town meeting. We've had that discussion, we've heard from each other, and we're really trying to do something good. So please, I urge you to adopt this. I urge you to have some faith in the people, to vote in the people that they want to lead us, and then I urge you to encourage them to follow the charter.
Further discussion from our members? Representative Vergara.
Jill Vergara, District 7. I really do welcome this opportunity to speak with everyone, and I'm glad that the meeting was called. It's what I've wanted to do for the past 4 years, is to actually have discussions and talk with each other. Normally it only happens at committee when nobody's watching, and not really at our votes. After listening to Representative Iacono talk about the charter, it has significance to me too. I take process very seriously. I take checks and balances really seriously. And what I have to remind everyone again is that this power already exists in the charter for the Board of Selectmen. There is some reason why this hasn't happened. They could have had their investigative powers fulfilled in July, in August, in September. Why didn't this happen before? I think that we need to have an independent commission so that we can know that this is being done properly. I agree with Representative Gerber that we have to think about budgetary pressures. Of course, the next Board of Selectmen is going to have a motive to sweep this under the rug. If some of the procedures that come out that we need to do as a town are expensive, there's going to be a motive for them to not do it and not to pursue these things. I want an independent commission to take this on and to have oversight. I still really don't understand. I agree with Representative Gerber. I don't understand what the problem is.
Further discussion from members of the body? Representative Tallman.
Hi, Peter Tallman, District 8. I think a part of the problem is, and this is something I've addressed since I started on the RTM 4 years ago, if you look at our committees, there's very little expertise. I mentioned this one of the first weeks with the first selectman. You look at our building committees, there's no builders on them. You look at our tax committee, there are no accountants on them. So my biggest problem is, who are we going to get? As Representative Iacono said, how many experts in this town are there that are going to be able to really look at this and have some a strong background of the subject matter? Thanks.
Further discussion for our members. So many people have spoken, some people have spoken twice. I'm trying not to get to thirds, unless there's a great sense from the body that we want to have third discussions. Usually we allow 2 bites at the apple for people. Is there further discussion from the RTM? We'll take public comment on the item for the body. So if there's multiple people that would like to speak, please form a line. So that members of the public are aware, so we limit public comment to 3 minutes. Please keep your comments directed to the item that's before the body, which is the amended resolution number 2. Please keep your comments respectful, and please identify yourself for the record.
Hi, my name is Becky Bunnell, and I'm a member, or I live in Fairfield. I have been interested to hear this discussion, and to me, it seems like you guys are very close, both the Republican and the Democratic group. Some of the conversations that I have heard as suggestions have not turned into motions, and my request would be that we actually have someone put a motion on the table to make the first selectman be the oversight board of this initiative, but that it be a unanimous decision all the way through, not just in selecting the firm, so that we take politics out. I have to say that I have been very disappointed seeing the FairTV of the Board of Selectmen meetings and the politics that's gone into that and the infighting that seems to be going on. And as much as I know that there will be a new Board of Selectmen coming up, I don't want to put them in the same position of having to have similar political things go back and forth. And I would just, if it was unanimous, then they have to work together, because it has to be done as a unanimous board all the way through. And that would be my request, is that someone put a motion in and make that unanimous.
I'm Bill Hopf. I live at Hemlock Hills Road North. So, having seen the Board of Selectmen meetings over the past month or so, which are incredibly partisan, and thinking that this, and the attitude that was obviously coming forth, particularly from Mr. Timniak, was that this is the fault of another member of Mr. Tetros. So in a sense, it's like this is an investigation of the behaviors of the Board of Selectmen. So I think it's not common sense to have them be involved in the beginnings of it and being the ones to choose who it is, or have them be the ones to choose this firm, because the firm is important, plus anything else that happens along the way. So that's my reason for thinking that the right thing to do is have a citizen oversight. And I also would object to the idea that our citizen volunteer boards are unskilled or less than skilled, because when we vote for a first selectman or a second or select people, we're voting for people who I doubt that they have experience or expertise in this area. So we have a better chance of getting the right people to oversee this if we choose from 60,000, well, 36,000 people who are voters in the town of Fairfield, as opposed to the 3 people that won the election for various reasons. Thank you.
I share your shortness, Sharon. Trudy Durrell, Woodcrest Road in Fairfield. I just have a few comments and questions, one of which is, if a motion was put forward that you needed a firm or firms because you wanted to make sure you had the correct experts, I'm not really sure why an independent resident commission would be appropriate, because I too, like some other people have mentioned, am a little concerned that even though we have 60,000 some odd residents, that I'm not sure if you have residents from a variety of political affiliations or non-affiliations that can also meet that need for a very specific type of situation that we're talking about. I also wanted to just mention that I believe that the Board of Selectmen's job is to manage the town. That is their job. Whether it's been done well in the last several months is obviously up for debate, but that's not the question on the table tonight. The question on the table tonight is what the residents really want is that this issue is resolved, it's figured out, it's cleaned up, and we move forward, regardless of who is sitting on this Board of Selectmen. But it is in fact their job to do some of this and to manage that. Really, we want, at least from the people that I have spoken to in a variety of areas of town, we want it resolved, we want the money accounted for, we want accountability for actions, inactions, funding, transparency, and honestly, who that independent firm reports to, they report to us. We're paying for it, one way or the other. So I don't know that you need a special commission to report to and then report to the town. You can have the firm do a direct report to the town in a public meeting, such as this one. Thank you.
My name is Bill Perugini. I reside on Fairfield Beach Road, and I was part of 2 Fairfield Beach neighborhood organizations who first brought these issues to the attention of town officials back in 2016. And over the past 3 years, I've been to meeting after meeting after meeting, and I still have questions, as do many people in this room. I feel strongly that we need professionals who are committed, who are qualified, and who will be impartial and independent in seeking the answers that we all have been awaiting. I, for one, would like to know how this happened. How did this happen? Number 2, what else might be in that fill pile? And exactly where has that fill pile been used across town? And lastly, and most importantly, what safeguards will be immediately implemented so that public trust, public health, and public safety is never again compromised? Please hire professionals. Thank you.
My name is Douglas Price, and I reside on Willowbrook Road in District 4. And I'd like to speak in favor of the Citizen Commission and the hiring of outside experts. I feel that one of the primary concerns that citizens have about this entire issue is that it is a breakdown of governance, both at the operational level in the departments and in the Board of Selectmen and in this body. And the debate that we've witnessed here tonight does not instill confidence that this issue will be resolved in a nonpartisan way that answers the questions that the public has. That we are simply to vote in our selectmen and RTM members and trust that they will then proceed and take care of this problem for us, perhaps with outside expertise. I don't feel confidence that that answers the concerns of the citizenry. And I feel that we need to have citizen representation to remove the partisan use of this particular issue. That's one of the things that has been most disturbing about this. Not even as much as the health risks or the environmental risks of this, but to see that the way an issue like this can be used to divide, the way that social media has been used to make this into a almost histrionic issue. I feel we need to step back from that, remove the partisan aspects of this, and engage the citizens of this town in resolving the issue. Thank you.
Hi, my name is Janine Alianello, and I just want to say one thing. I just think you should come together like you're trying. And I think there's about 35 volunteer commissions in this town, and I noticed that the Ethics Commission has 2 vacant spots. So I think most people don't have time to volunteer, and they would love their input, but just get professionals and get new people elected and try to work together and make this not happen, because it's pretty disturbing to almost everybody. But there's not enough people to volunteer their time, and there is an ethics committee. Maybe they could report to that committee, but there's only 3 out of 5 spots filled. Thank you.
Alexa Milady, 143 Rolling Hills Drive. I sat on this board, and number one, I'm really glad it's not 50 members anymore. But it's really nice to see that people are trying to work together. And I think we all have to remember that we're all going to the same place. We just disagree sometimes on how to get there. I'm encouraged on the compromises that I've heard. And I think people have to remember that for this particular situation, I don't think it's a good idea for the Board of Selectmen to abdicate their responsibility to an independent commission. And I think that now more than ever, we have the opportunity to show the people of this town that going forward, our Board of Selectmen can work together and they can do their job, because that's what they're actually going to be elected to do. I appreciate all of you and all the hard work that you're doing to try to work together on this. Thank you.
Brenda Kupchik, State Representative, and thank you for your service. And what you're doing is you both have similar ideas about how to address this issue. And unfortunately, I think what should have happened, probably, last week, is that you should have been brought together to try to work this out and come with one proposal as an entire body. It is the first selectman's job, not the Board of Selectmen, to lead the town. It is a body that looks at various issues, but the overall responsibility is of the board, is of the first selectman, and there should be audits done on these departments by the first selectman, independently. So what you're doing, I think, is good, and I hope you don't vote on a partisan vote, because I don't think that's really what most of you want to do. And as Representative Bastilli said, it should be compromise and it should be bipartisan. So maybe you might possibly want to table it and come back next week and have an opportunity to sit down with each other and work out a compromise and vote unanimously on something that's really important for our community. That's all I have to say.
Tom McCarthy, 15 Lovers Lane. As I'm sitting in the audience, I'm thinking to myself, this is not as complex as some of the discussion, as you would draw from some of the discussion. When all is said and done, the contamination of the fill pile is a symptom, but it's not the underlying cause. The real problem here is a breakdown in management. And it's not as though anybody did anything wrong. There's a lack of checks and balances of managerial control that needs to be put in place. And I don't think anybody's arguing that anymore. So going out and hiring an independent firm to make recommendations to the Board of Selectmen, in specific the first selectman, I think is appropriate, because what this boils down to is we're going to have to change the way we do business. We need to have controls in place which arguably ought to have been there all along. Had they been, in my view, if there was a management structure or reporting structure up to the first selectman which allow greater oversight into what's going on within the various departments, I think this could have been avoided. In many ways, I view this in some respects like parallel to Sarbanes-Oxley, or familiar, if many of you may be familiar with that. That's what I would argue is a draconian response to Enron. So when a problem like this surfaces, we have to look hard. I'm not so concerned about pointing fingers and going back and looking at blame. I think the important thing is to fix the problem now. And the problem seems to me is lack of, for one other word I would characterize, as business controls. So we have to put business controls in place. I don't think any member of the Board of Selectmen would disagree with that. And it's a matter of changing the way we do business. So it's appropriate to get a firm in, professionals, to look at the process, make recommendations of how those business controls be implemented, and putting a management structure and a reporting structure back into place so that the first selectman, the CEO of the town, has enough information and enough overview of what's going on to make managerial decisions. So, thank you.
Good evening, Dana Carey, Green Acres Lane. I would like to commend all of you for this meeting and truly coming together and addressing the overall issue. And, you know, Representative Bertram had said that we don't trust. And I do believe that the reason that we don't trust and why the tenor of our most meetings has been one of angst, frustration. The meetings have not been productive meetings. And the sense that I get is that meetings are less productive when you're trying to figure out what's going on. So when you know there's something that's just not right, there's something that isn't sitting well, it creates this rub. And it's the rub that we don't need to have. We shouldn't be flying between the meetings and under the radar. We should be doing exactly what you're doing now, which is addressing the issues. And then concerning the independent commission, the one thing that, and I know Janine Iannello had said, we have an ethics commission. The ethics commission is unanimous approval by the Board of Selectmen with 5 members. Marguerite Toth is a member of that commission. Jill Kelly was a member of that commission. I don't know the other members very well. However, if you have a statesman, if you have a person who truly represents, when I moved to Fairfield in 1994, I was told Jill Kelly is the mayor of Southport. Exactly. Marguerite Toth is that representative. She is Fairfield. She is the unanimous approval of every representative, every resident of Fairfield as our town clerk. Betsy Brown, in your future ethics commission. You know, we have fabulous town involvement in our body. We have town involvement in our residents. We have a commission that it has unanimous approval by the Board of Selectmen. And then I'm going to read to you one of their powers or duties, and go to the charter. And I encourage you, the charter is the Bible. The charter is the end-all, be-all, is where we should go for everything. If we have a question about what's going on, go to the charter. So here in 10.15, Section 8, have the power to retain its own counsel, administer oaths, issue subpoenas, and subpoenas, duces tecum, enforce upon, Tom would know all that words, enforceable upon application to the Superior Court, to compel the attendance of persons at hearings and the production of books, documents, records, and papers. And, continuing to number 9, upon finding a violation of the standards of conduct or code of ethics, at its discretion, recommend appropriate disciplinary action to the Board of Selectmen or appropriate department heads. Our Ethics Commission is your commission that is appointed. It has terms that are, they cannot change all at the same time. The Ethics Commission does exactly what your independent commission should do, and it's part of our charter. Thank you very much.
Seeing no further public comment, we'll return to the body. Representative Wackerman.
Mr. Moderator, I'd like to call a caucus meeting.
Okay, so we will recess for 10 minutes. I think almost everyone's returned. We'll call the meeting to order. Unless someone thinks we're missing people. We get everybody back? We'll reconvene the meeting. Is there any further discussion on the item before the body? Representative Hurley.
Michael Hurley, RTM District 10. I'd like to offer a compromise, an amendment to the resolution that I'm really hoping will bring this body together. I'd like to add a new number 4 under let it further be resolved, pushing down the existing 4 and 5. I'm going to read it and read it very slowly. All decisions made by the Board of Selectmen related to this resolution are required to be made unanimously, period. I think this addresses the issue of any partisanship on the Board of Selectmen while following our town charter, and I hope that everyone will join me in supporting this amendment. Thank you.
Can you restate the motion just so I have it?
All decisions made by the Board of Selectmen relating to this resolution are required to be made unanimously, period.
I got it, okay.
Thank you.
Is there a second for the motion? Seconded by Representative Bove. Is there any discussion on that motion? Seeing none, is there any comment from the public on the motion to insert a new paragraph that would be number 4 under let it be resolved and would read, all decisions made by the Board of Selectmen relating to this resolution are required to be made unanimously? Is there any discussion from the public? Seeing none, we'll come back to the body for a vote. All those in favor, please signify by saying aye. Aye. All opposed? Any abstentions? The motion carries. Further discussion from members of the body on this item. Representative Gerber.
Bill Gerber, District 2. I'd like to propose a series of amendments to the existing proposal. Above, the Board of Selectmen shall contract with a credible outside independent firm. I would like to insert, be it resolved that the Fairfield Representative Town Meeting recommends that the Board of Selectmen immediately establish an independent, nonpartisan commission to examine the facts around the dumping of hazardous waste at the aggregate pile at the Fairfield Department of Public Works yard and the possible use of that fill in parks, fields, and playgrounds around Fairfield. Further resolved that such commission shall be composed of residents with appropriate expertise, an equal number of residents from each of the 2 major political parties in town, and that in order to ensure the political independence of the commission, no member of the commission shall either hold or be a candidate for any elected office. Further resolved that the commission shall be charged with the following and be provided adequate funding to accomplish said tasks. That would be my first proposed amendment.
Is there a second for the proposed amendment? Second by Representative Wackerman. Is there any discussion on the proposed amendment? Seeing none, is there any comment from the public on the proposed amendment? Seeing none, we'll come back to the body. Can I have, do you have a copy of the language that I can?
Yeah.
Or can you just restate it again?
This would be from the original proposal. I think it's in, yeah.
Oh, it's on the, you're reading from the call?
Yeah, I'm reading from the call.
I guess I can read that.
The second amendment, proposed amendment would be.
Wait, we have to, or is it your
I'm
intention
sorry.
to take them separately?
They all go together, so we could do them once or separately.
It was made as a motion separately, so I think, got it. So I think we'll take each independently. So the motion is to insert, further resolve that such commission be composed of residents with appropriate, maybe I missed the paragraph. You've got the paragraph beginning.
Be it resolved that the Fairfield Representative Town Meeting recommends that the Board of Selectmen immediately establish an independent, nonpartisan commission to examine the facts around the dumping of hazardous waste at the aggregate pile at the Fairfield Department of Public Works yard and the possible use of that fill in parks, fields, and playgrounds around Fairfield, then all the way through, if you're looking at the call, be provided adequate funding to accomplish such tasks.
Okay. Okay. I offered the RTM comment, I offered public comment, there was no comment from either. So at this point, it comes back to the body. I was having the motion restated for the purpose of a vote.
I'd like to move for a roll call.
So there's no more discussion on, the discussion's been joined on the item, we vote on the item now. So you can make, after the amendment is voted on, you can make a further motion to amend something if you wish. So there's been a request for a roll call vote, which is fine. We'll do a roll call vote. So Representative Gerber, can you clarify where those paragraphs are inserted in the resolution?
That would be inserted above the current, I believe it's the third paragraph. Maybe it's the second after we struck the second paragraph. So it would be the second paragraph now. above, the commission shall contract with a credible outside independent firm.
Okay, so just so everyone's clear on what we're voting on. It's, from item 3 on the agenda, it's the first three resolved paragraphs. The one that begins now, therefore be it resolved, the one further resolved, and the next further resolved that ends with funding to accomplish said tasks. And that, the motion is to insert that before the language in the existing resolution above the sentence that begins, the Board of Selectmen shall contract, as it currently reads in that resolution. So that's the motion is before the body. We will do a roll call vote.
Chester?
No.
Nancy Lefkowitz? Yes. Mike Mahoney?
No.
Mayor Shea? No. Bill Gerber?
Yes.
Aaron Lopez? Yes. Eric Newman?
Yes.
Cindy Perham?
Yes.
Alex Terrell?
No.
Matt Jacobs?
Yes.
Sandra Marshall? Yes. Sharon Stilly? Yes. Bill Pierce?
Yes.
Bonnie Martelli?
No.
Marcy Spallier?
Yes.
Josh Garthrow?
Yes.
Liz Smay?
Yes.
Jay Wolf?
Yes.
Matt Ambrose? Steve Barrett?
Yes.
Anna Gale?
No.
Lisa Havey? Yes. Lauren Bovee? Yes. Mark McDermott?
Yes.
Jill Regaro? Yes. Karen Wackerman? Yes. Carrie Burcham? Pamela Iacona?
No.
Christine Messina?
No.
Kate Tallman?
No.
Brian Farnan?
No.
Dorian Herron? No. Margaret Horton? Yes. Michael Hurley?
No.
Frank Batiste?
No.
Eric Sutton?
No. Okay, so the motion carries 22 yes, 14 no, so that amendment passes. Representative Gerber, I'll allow you to have the floor for another amendment if you have one.
So can I question about how to proceed? May I make several suggestions rather than go through each one where the Board of Selectmen is mentioned and replacing it with the Independent Commission? May I do it as one motion?
As long as it's clear what we're voting on, yes. I mean, a member can ask, a member could probably ask to have that divided if they wish, but as long as it's clear what we're voting on.
Okay, so my motion would be to, in number 5, actually, I think there's an error here. The outside firm should be the independent firm. The independent firm shall report to the, instead of the 3-member body of the Board of Selectmen, I would like to replace that with the Independent Commission. Let it be further resolved that in number 1, the independent firm shall be interviewed and chosen by the Independent Commission instead of to replace the entire Board of Selectmen. Number 2, the appropriate department head should assist with writing the request of services, and that request should be voted upon by, instead of the entire Board of Selectmen, I'd like to replace that with the Independent Commission. Number 3, the department head liaison to the independent firm shall be the conservation director, who shall report to the, instead of Board of Selectmen, replace that with independent commission.
Just to be clear, some of that language was previously amended. So it now reads, that paragraph now reads, the department liaison to the independent firm shall be determined by unanimous vote of the Board of Selectmen. So,
I'd like to replace the unanimous vote of the Board of Selectmen with the independent commission.
okay.
Number 4, moving forward, any public meeting by the independent firm. I'd like to replace independent firm with independent commission.
Yeah, that is, right, that is the new 5, just to be clear.
Oh, the new 5, I'm sorry. Yep, the new 5. And I believe that's it.
Okay, is there a second for the motion? Seconded by Representative Vergara. Is there any discussion on the motion? Representative Hurley.
Michael Hurley, RTM District 10. I had hoped to speak to the first amendments made by my colleague, Representative Gerber. I had turned my head, and the moderator had moved pretty quickly on that. I don't support any of these amendments. I had come to the mic earlier with a true bipartisan amendment to bring my Democratic colleagues along, and I'm absolutely flawed. I cannot believe they are trying. This is what's calling the Democrat majority now, using their votes on the floor to steamroll the minority. That's what they're doing. Folks, make no mistake about
Hurley,
it.
I'm calling you to order. There was a point of order.
Thank you.
The point of order was on the motivations of members of the body. The point of order is well taken. So I would point out, please do not call into question motivations.
Okay.
The rest of your comments stand.
Okay. I will come back to the mic after, and if you could also ask the audience not to clap, I would appreciate that.
The audience
Thank
should
you.
not clap, should not participate in that way. Further comments from the body, Representative Tallman.
Hi, Peter Tallman, District 8. Just a question. What happens if we don't find 5 qualified people? This is something very precise. I think somebody even mentioned before, there's probably not many companies that do this. So what happens? This is going to, I assume this is going to take months to probably get a committee together. If we can't get 5 qualified people, what do we do?
Further discussion on the item, Representative Perrin.
Cindy Parham, District 2. Peter, I respect you. You got up twice to say there's not enough skilled people on committees. I served with you and Mr. Hurley on senior tax relief for a year. You both resigned in January, and I just can't believe that you would say that there are not people willing to do the work to go deep, because 3 Democrats still serve on senior tax relief.
Representative Jacobs.
Matt Jacobs, District 3, to address those comments as well. The Board of Selectmen has the ability to hire an independent firm already. If this doesn't work, if we can't find the people, they can go forward and hire the firm anyway.
Further discussion, Representative Castelli.
Sharon Pristilli, District 3. So I just wanted to reiterate that, when we originally came together, we had 2 different ideas, and one of them was to form an independent commission, and the other was to hire an independent firm. And compromising is bringing both together. That is the compromise. We're taking both ideas and putting them into one proposal. That's the compromise.
Further discussion? Representative Wackerman?
Karen Wackerman, District 7. Just to reiterate what Mr. Jacobs just said, the members of this committee don't need to have specific expertise in the areas. That's why they would be hiring people. And we fill building committees. We have a great town full of people who are volunteers. So there's just no way, and this is an item of great interest to people in town. So there's no way we won't find good people. And I also want to address the suggestion that this is a political move. We genuinely want to do it this way so it's not political. We want this to be done in a very non-political, bipartisan way, and we really strongly believe this is the best way to do that.
Further discussion? Selectman Bateson? Okay.
Hi, Ed Bateson. Okay, this is a lot to absorb. I don't know what the etiquette is here. I guess I'm going to go to, in this, the current proposal that's now before you, what's the role of the Board of Selectmen? Now I'm confused. Is now the independent commission running the whole show? Are they going to come back to the Board of Selectmen and say, here's your 60 things, 80 things that we've tested. We are recommending that you do what? Or is the independent commission going to say, we are going to remediate this? Am I abdicating my responsibility in toto? Okay, because I didn't want to speak. I wanted to let you guys wind up, land where you wanted to land. But now I'm concerned because I don't want unelected people running this show, okay? I'm not going to be here in 45 days. I'm not going to be on the Board of Selectmen. But I want to be able to go into a meeting and yell at somebody that I elected if I don't think they're handling this issue properly. That's where I am on this. Okay, an independent commission, if you want to do that to investigate what happened and what went wrong, I'd be willing to sign off on that. If you want me to abdicate or tell the Board of Selectmen you don't participate in remediating fields, no. This is what I elected these people for. This is what I went into the booth for. I want to be able to go in and say, if you don't do it to my satisfaction, I'm voting you out of office. I have no recourse on a private citizen.
Further discussion? Is there any further discussion from members of the body? Go to someone that hasn't spoken yet. Representative Fortin.
So I came in tonight, not necessarily with a clear idea of how I was going to vote, and I've really tried to listen and to all sides, to all perspectives, and I guess I'm confused in trying to understand how we're still at odds, because what's on the table now feels like it is exactly the best of both worlds of what we've all kind of wanted to come together. Just a couple points, talking about I understand the sentiment of not necessarily wanting an unelected official running the show. That being said, I think that the public sentiment right now, from all sides, nonpartisan, is truly that there isn't a great deal of faith in the elected officials, perhaps, and that's exactly why we need an independent commission to be part of this. And then in terms of finding volunteers, this is such a hot button issue right now. If anybody's been on social media, you're aware of what a hot button issue this is. I guarantee you post, on social media later tonight looking for volunteers for this commission, you're going to have 50 people tomorrow morning, trying to be part of this. So I don't think finding people to be part of this commission is going to be an issue.
Further discussion? Anyone that hasn't spoken to Representative Gerber's motion? Okay, Representative Gerber?
Thanks for for speaking, Selectman Bateson. I want to respond to what I would envision this looking like many of our other commissions. I think what I would envision is this commission independently saying this is what needs to get done. Yeah, if they say there are 50 fields that need to be tested, I mean, they're not going out and testing them themselves, but they're hiring firms to do that. And they're going to go to you or whoever's on the Board of Selectmen at that time and say, I need X amount of money to test these fields. I need Y amount of money to make sure that these areas are remediated. And the Board of Selectmen obviously can cut that, but if they cut it, it's at their own peril. At least the information will be out there. I do not want political or budgetary motivations in the future, not this board, because we're going to have a new board soon. I do not want anyone to further. There will be motivations to stop the work at some point, and I don't think that's not what I want. I want this to go to its conclusion. So this will put it out in the public, and people will have faith that people who care, that aren't motivated necessarily by the budget or by winning an election, are out there telling you what they believe needs to get done. And those people on the Board of Selectmen are, at their own peril, they would say, we're not going to fund it.
Further discussion from members of the body? Any comment from members of the public? Seeing none, take a vote. Another roll call vote.
Just a point of order. We were voting on the amendment, correct?
Yes, so do you want me to restate what we're voting on? All right. So in item 5, under the first numbered list, it would read, the independent firm shall report to the independent commission. That's the first change. The second change is, let's see, under let it be further resolved that the independent firm, actually, so remember every time we say firm, we're saying firm, open parenthesis, S, close parenthesis. So firm should be interviewed and chosen by the independent commission. The next change is that in 2, entire Board of Selectmen is replaced with an independent commission. The next change is in 3, paragraph 3, and the language unanimous vote of the Board of Selectmen is replaced by independent commission. The next change is in what is now paragraph 5, which replaces the word independent firm with independent commission. That's the motion that's before the body, that amendment. And we'll do a roll call vote.
Steve Chesterman? No. Nancy Lefkowitz? No. Michael Mahoney?
No.
Amy O'Shea?
No.
Bill Berger?
Yeah.
Aaron Lopez? Yes. Eric Newman?
Yes.
Cindy Firm? Yes. Alex Terrell?
No.
Matt Jacobs?
Yes.
Sandra Marshall? Yes. Karen Castilli? Yes. Bill Pierce?
Yes.
Bonnie Rotelli? No. Marcy Collier? Yes. Josh Carswell?
Yes.
Liz May?
Yes.
Jay Wolf?
Yes.
Matt Ambrose?
Yes.
Steve Barrett?
Yes.
Hannah Gale?
No.
Lisa Hayes? Yes. Lauren Bode? Yes. Mark McDermott?
Yes.
Jill Bernard? Yes. Karen Wackerman? Yes. Harry Burcham? Pamela Econo?
No.
Christine Messina?
No.
Peter Tallman?
No.
Brian Farnan?
No.
Dorian Herron?
No.
Roderick Horton? Yes. Michael Early?
No.
Frank Batiste?
No.
Eric Sunman?
No.
So the vote is 20 yes, 15 no, 1 abstention, so that motion carries. Is there further discussion on the item before the body as amended? Okay, so in the there's been a point of information for me to read in the second numbered list, paragraph 4, which was added, and that paragraph reads, all decisions made by the Board of Selectmen relating to this resolution are required to be made unanimously. Is there any discussion on the item before the body? Representative Hurley?
Michael Hurley, RTM District 10. Unfortunately, I can't, support this as it's right now written. What concerns me about the independent commission is you're asking the Board of Selectmen to essentially create a commission that's going to sit above the town's executive committee, the highest board in the town. And that's a board of which the first selectman, who is the chief executive officer of our town, is the chairman of. I mean, it's circular reasoning. It just doesn't make sense how the executive body of the town can create a committee to sit above itself, essentially, to investigate a very serious matter, what transpired with the fill pile. So again, I understand the need to compromise, and that's why I put forth my amendment to make the votes on the Board of Selectmen unanimous. And I really hoped, that would have satisfied my colleagues across the aisle, but, clearly, that there's other things going on. Thank you.
Further discussion from members? Representative Vergara? So the amendment's passed, so you can make an amendment, a freestanding motion to amend something.
Jill Vergara, District 7, in some of Representative Gerber's first amendments, when he inserted the language above the Board of Selectmen shall contract with a credible outside independent firm, he inserted 2 paragraphs. The second paragraph where it reads, further resolved, I would like to strike that 1 paragraph and have it read, further resolved that such commission be composed of residents with appropriate expertise. In order to ensure political independence, the commission shall have 5 members, 2 of whom are registered Democrats, 2 of whom are registered Republicans, and 1 of whom is unaffiliated. No member of the commission may hold or be a candidate for any elected office.
Can I see the amendment? Okay, is there a second for the proposed amendment? Second by Representative Jacobs. And just to be clear, Representative Gerber's motion added 3 paragraphs. You said 2, just so we're all clear. This is striking this second. This is making an edit to the second paragraph. Is there any discussion from members of the body on the proposed amendment? I can read it again if people want it read again. Read it again? Okay, so the paragraph will be revised to read, further resolved that such commission be composed of residents with appropriate expertise. In order to ensure political independence, the commission shall have 5 members, 2 of whom are registered Democrats, 2 of whom are registered Republicans, and one who is unaffiliated. No member of the commission may hold or be a candidate for any elected office. Representative Burcham.
Representative Burcham for a question for Jill through the moderator. Who appoints these people? Sorry. Who would appoint the 5 humans?
Like all of the other commissions, it would be the Board of Selectmen.
I just want to be clear that that's not, so at the moment, that's not stated in, I think, the language of the resolution. So I guess, so if we're parsing the current language of the resolution, I think it doesn't say that it's appointed by the Board of Selectmen, but it does say, it says it's appointed by the Board of Selectmen. It does say that, so it recommends that the Board of Selectmen establish it, and paragraph 4 requires it to be done unanimously by the Board of Selectmen. So, Representative Hurley, I think that answers your question. It's done by the Board of Selectmen unanimously under the current wording of what's before the body.
Thank you for that.
So, any further discussion on Representative Vergara's amendment? Seeing none, we'll go to the public for public comment. Any public comment on the item? Seeing none, we'll come back to the body. Roll call vote.
Nancy Lefkowitz? Yes. Michael Mahoney? No. Amy O'Shea? No. Bill Berger?
Yes.
Erin Lopez? Yes. Eric Newman?
Yes.
Carl? Yes. Alex Terrell?
No.
Ben Jacobs?
Yes.
Sandra Marshall? Yes. Sharon Stilly? Yes. Bill Pierce?
Yes.
Bonnie Bertelli?
No.
Marcy Collier? Yes. Josh Garspel?
Yes.
Lisa Knight?
Yes.
Jay Wolf?
Yes.
Matt Ambrose?
Yes.
Steve Barrett?
Yes.
Hannah Gale?
Yes.
Lisa Hayden? Yes. Lauren Bobé? Yes. Mark McDermott?
Yes.
Jill Bergara? Yes. Karen Wackerman? Yes. Carrie Burcham? Yes. Pamela Iacona? No. Christine Messina? No. Peter Tallman?
No.
Ryan Farnan?
No.
Dorian Herron? No. Roger Horton? Yes. Michael Hurley?
No.
Frank Batiste?
No.
Eric Sonda?
No.
So that motion passes 23 to 13. Before we resume discussion, I want to just point out to the members that under Rule 36, we can't take up any new items past 11, and we actually adjourn at 11:30 unless there's a motion to suspend the rules to finish tonight. If we don't finish tonight, we continue the meeting tomorrow night, which is Friday, as the town clerk has pointed out, and we would resume at 8 p.m. tomorrow night here. So I'm just going to point that out. So we'll continue the discussion. Is there any further discussion? Any other amendments? Anything? Representative Garskov.
Thank you, Mr. Moderator. Josh Garskoff, District 5. Just to address Mr. Hurley's comments, I don't think we're creating a commission here that would be above the Board of Selectmen. I think the Board of Selectmen would name members to the commission, and the commission would report back to the Board of Selectmen, so I'm not sure that's a concern. I also would make a motion that we extend the meeting past 11 as needed.
So So it's a motion to suspend Rule 36 to allow
That's the one.
items to be taken up after 11 and to allow discussion past 11:30.
Yes, thank you.
Okay, is there a second for the motion? Seconded by Representative Walk. Is there any discussion on the motion to suspend the rules? That rule, specifically Rule 36, in those aspects. Seeing none, is there any public comment on that motion? Seeing none, we'll come back to the body for a vote. This requires 2/3. All those in favor, please signify by saying aye. Aye. Opposed? Any abstentions? Okay, the motion passes. Thank you, Representative Garskoff. Any further discussion on the item?
Are we on the amendment or back to the full item?
So the amendment passed.
Okay.
We are now on the item as amended.
Okay.
Representative Hurley.
So I'm against this again, and just, giving it some additional thought. And look, I think there's three things here. I think, number one, it's a vote against representative democracy because you're not instilling the power in the elected officials on the Board of Selectmen. Number two, I think it's inconsistent with our town charter, so it's a vote against our town charter. And most importantly, given the number of amendments, substantive amendments, that we're dealing with here, and this is a very serious issue, it's a vote against clarity. I don't think that really many people here, if any members of this body, truly know what's in this proposal right now. And I think that's unfortunate. And I don't think, how can you vote in favor of something when you don't even have the full document in front of you? So, look, I think if you're going to vote in favor of it, I think that's something that you have to live with. So I would encourage you to vote no.
Further discussion? Representative Wagner?
Karen Wackerman, District 7. I think it would be a real shame if we leave here tonight and we haven't passed a resolution. This is not rocket science. We all really agree with 90% of this. It's just who is overseeing this. And I would strongly ask my colleagues on the other side of the aisle if they would consider passing this and do it for the sake of the town. It's the right thing to do. The town needs to know there's action here. There's people who are going to be looking into this and really investigating it. Just get that started. It hasn't been happening at the Board of Selectmen level, so why it would suddenly be happening there, I don't know. Let's do an independent commission instead. The Board of Selectmen oversees that, and get it started. Get something going. Thanks.
Further discussion? Representative Wall.
Jay Wolk, District 5. Mr. Monitor, just to ask Representative Hurley, just to clarify, when you said an independent counsel wouldn't be transparent, is that what I'm hearing? Or an independent counsel would be? Yeah, absolutely.
Michael Hurley, RTM District 10. So just to repeat my 3 points as I sat and I gave it a little bit more thought and I tried to pull them all together. I think, number one, as the ordinance is currently, not ordinance, the proposal as it's currently written, number one is a vote against really, representative democracy, because I think the power needs to rely on the Board of Selectmen as elected officials so they can be held accountable, not an independent commission. Number two, I think it's inconsistent with the town charter, and it's really a vote against our town charter. And, the other issue is clarity. I mean, what's really in this, proposal, at almost 11 p.m. We've had so many amendments. I think my distinguished colleague from, I think it's District 3, Bill Gerber, I mean, he added 3 paragraphs, and then he had several other, amendments. I'm not really sure what's in there now. So are you really comfortable, voting on something that you really don't know exactly everything that's in there? There's no fully typed copy of it. It's not like all 50 members have it. And when Representative Iacono made, her edits to it, we passed out copies, and, I think those are the type of things that members of the body should, expect from their colleagues. So thank you. I hope that helps, Jay.
I'm still confused. So wouldn't an independent counsel look into the situation that we're trying to do to figure out what happened? I mean, I don't really need a document or a proposal to know what an independent counsel would do. And as long as the first selectman and the first selectman board oversees that independent counsel, I'm not quite following why that would be not good, not be a good thing for the town. Thank you.
Further discussion? Representative Pastilli?
I'd like to propose an additional, oh no, I busted it. Okay, I'm sorry. Sharon Pastilli, District 3. I'd like to propose an additional amendment that would follow the paragraph that is further resolved that such commission be composed of residents with appropriate expertise, ... So the next, I would like to add an additional paragraph. Further resolved that the Board of Selectmen must approve each member of the commission unanimously. The RTM must then approve the members, by majority vote. Thank you.
Is there a second for the motion? Second by Representative Jacobs. Is there any discussion from the RTM on that motion? Seeing none, is there any comment from the public?
Dana Carey, Greenacre Lane. I'd also just like to add that the members of the commission cannot be town employees, because if they're reviewing town operations, they should not be, and they live in town, they can't, there's a huge conflict of interest on so I had said that I would like the members of the commission who are town employees, or members who cannot be on the commission who are town employees. If you'd consider adding that. Thank you.
Yeah, go ahead.
Hi, my name is Marissa Ringel, Southport, Connecticut on Hulls Highway. And just hearing and reviewing all the documents, and in listening to Michael Hurley's comment about the lack of a clear document, and then right after you said that they're adding another proposed paragraph, it just seems to me that that's how we got into this trouble in the first place, with the lack of documentation, lack of RFP, proper RFP, lack of contracts. So I would like to hope that this body take Brenda's suggestion, take a week, get a proper document together, and vote on it next week, and hopefully unanimously coming together, because I just think you really need a clear document once and for all. I'm really confused what's going on here.
Further discussion from the public?
Hi, Douglas Price, resident of Fairfield on Willowbrook Road. I would like to speak in favor of both of the public comments that were just made. One, that there is a conflict of interest of having city employee or town employees sitting on the commission, so that's obviously something that we would want to avoid. And also to address the issues about what is in the text. I think that it would be appropriate to have the text as it has been amended distributed to all members of the RTM and have a vote at a later date, that only to address any concerns on the part of the public and members of the RTM about what is actually in the language, and also to identify if there are contradictions within the text as it has been amended that would need to be addressed. But in general, I fully support the idea of having a board of, a commission of citizens that's actually playing a role in this part, and I believe that it is not an attack on representative democracy, but it is actually an engagement of citizens in a role where representative democracy is not functioning in a way that is transparent and that satisfies the concerns of the citizenry. Thank you.
Bill Llewellyn, 320 Morehouse Drive. My question is, how long are you going to drag this out? I mean, now we've got the Board of Selectmen is going to find 5 people that are qualified, they're going to do the research, and then you're going to bring it back to this body here to vote on it, and then, I mean, then these people then got to elect a firm, find a firm. I mean, are we looking 6 months, a year, year and a half, 2? I mean, how much longer do you want to drag this out? Is my question to you. We have a good proposal here to get a company, a firm quickly, to get this moving, but, I mean, you guys added another layer, and that's the problem here with government. We drag everything out.
So we'll come back to the body for further comment from the body on the proposed amendment. Representative Gale.
So I am looking at the town charter, and what I see here is it says specifically that all town officers, boards, commissions, and employees of the town appointed by the Board of Selectmen shall be responsible to them for the faithful performance of their respective duties, and shall report to the Board of Selectmen. And so it seems to me that according to the town charter, this body is responsible for making and changing laws. And the Board of Selectmen is really, this is their purview. What happened in our town is there were employees who did not render their duties, as they should. So I respectfully, I'm going to vote against this proposal because it does not give the purview where I believe the town charter dictates it should.
So further discussion from the RTM on the amendment. Okay, so we'll take another roll call vote. The amendment again is to insert, I'm sorry, Representative Vergara. Should take the microphone to make that motion.
Jill Vergara, District 7. I'd like to make a motion to suspend the rules, Rule 26, so that we can hold another caucus.
So there's a motion to suspend Rule 26 for the purpose of calling a political caucus. Is there a second to the motion? Second by Representative Pistilli.
I have a point of order.
Yes, Representative Hurley.
Is this debatable?
A motion to suspend the rules. Do you want to debate it?
I do.
I did look at that before the meeting, and I don't remember the answer. No, we didn't. It's not a debatable motion. So I'm sorry, Representative Hurley, you are not allowed to debate it. So we'll do a voice vote unless there's an interest in a roll call vote. Seeing no interest, all those in favor, please signify by saying aye.
Roll call, please.
Roll call, okay, we'll do a roll call vote, I'm fine with that.
Chester?
No.
Nancy Lefkowitz? Abstain. Lefty Maloney?
No.
Dee O'Shea? No. Bill Gerber?
Yeah.
Aaron Lopez? No. Eric Newman?
Yes.
Cindy Pearl? Yes. Alex Durrell?
No.
Matt Jacobs?
No.
Cassandra Marshall? Yes. Sharon Pistilli? Bill Pierce?
No.
Bonnie Bertelli? No. Brian Farnan. No. Dorian Herron. No. Margaret Horton. Michael Hurley.
No.
Frank Petiti. No. Eric Condon.
No.
Okay, so it's 13 yes, 20 no, 2 abstentions, so that does not pass. So further discussion on the items before the body. Representative Vergara.
Jill Vergara, District 7. I'd like to make a motion to table the item.
Okay, so I think what you want is a motion. I think you want a motion to postpone, or do you want to actually table this and then take up the next item on the agenda? Tabling it, I think, requires us to take it back up. Like I think tonight we have to take it back up. Or take it from the table. When do you want to discuss it? That's the real question. Do you want to discuss it later tonight? Or is your intention to postpone it to a different date? Okay, so would you go to the microphone and restate your motion?
I'd like to make a motion to postpone to a date certain next week at some time that we can all meet.
Okay, so there's a motion to postpone. I think your motion has to specify a date. I don't think we can just postpone, unless it's a motion to postpone indefinitely. I think you have to specify a date. So we don't have another special meeting scheduled. I'm happy to schedule another special meeting to discuss this. If there, I mean, I don't know.
Point of order, as it relates to this.
Go ahead. So is there a second for is there a second for the motion so we can talk about it? It's a motion to postpone to sometime next week. Representative Hurley?
So it's really a point of order question. So you're saying you're just going to call a special meeting for her postponement. I'm just not sure that you can just do that because this is a special meeting.
So
I'm not trying to sort of question your authority here, but...
I understand. My point is that there's a motion to postpone to a date certain, and there's a motion to postpone indefinitely. Neither of which, I'm not sure that Vergara's motion is either. I'm trying to find a solution to the...
And I'm not convinced that you can postpone a special meeting. That's my question. That defeats sort of the whole purpose of a special meeting, though, doesn't it? Because then you'd have to sort of call a new special meeting, and then the whole process starts over again.
No, a special meeting is, the purpose of a special meeting is to discuss only the items on the agenda. It does not preclude the body from postponing them to a future date. So this body could decide it wants to do that. The motion that's before the body is to postpone to sometime next week. I'm not sure that that's a proper motion. I don't think it is. So I think that that's really a motion to postpone indefinitely, which I don't think should be made.
procedurally, we're at a standstill. We're not going to come to agreement on this. We're at a 2/3 vote. We're not going to get it. So why don't we just take no action? The Board of Selectmen heard us. The public heard us. We had a discussion. Everybody knows where everybody stands. The whole point of this was to get this out in the public for them to hear and understand what's going on. So we simply take no action tonight and we move on. We all know what we want. There's one thing we're very clear on. We want answers as to what happened. We agree on that, and we agree that we want an independent firm. And the rest of that lies within the purview of the Board of Selectmen. So, in the interest of time, effort, energy, and the public, I recommend at this point we take no action because we are at a standstill. Thank you.
Okay, so the motion before the body is still a motion. I think the motion to postpone indefinitely. Is there any other discussion on that item? Just Representative Vergara, do you want to withdraw that motion and make a different motion?
I don't want it to be
I would propose to do a postponement until October 15th.
I have another meeting. Well, actually, maybe it won't. Okay, so there's a motion to postpone to a date certain, October 15th. Is there a second to the motion? Seconded by Representative Durrell. Is there any discussion on the motion to postpone to a date certain, October 15th? So I'm gonna call a 2-minute recess because I have to confer with the town clerk about whether we can actually postpone to that date. So we're gonna recess for 2 minutes. Karen. Calling the meeting back to order. Is there a point of order? Your second?
Can't wear them.
All right, that's. Yeah. I don't know if it's allowed, but I'll accept it. So, thank you, Representative Burrell. So I think we've got something from Representative Iacono and Representative Wackerman. You have the floor.
Thank you. Karen and I are both standing up here in unison to end this meeting hopefully the way that it began, and that is that Representative Wackerman called me, I spoke with her, we all spoke with our caucuses, we've all worked really hard to get a message out to the public that we're paying attention, that we know this is a serious issue, and that we want action taken on this issue. And we've reached a lot of consensus on a lot of different things. And I think at this point, there is enough information for all of the public to see that, for all of the sitting elected officials to understand that, and for all the candidates who are running for office to hear that. And they now know that these are the things that they are going to have to tackle when they come to office, and that we are all going to be paying attention. So with that in mind, the two of us would just like to adjourn and take no action on this item, knowing that all of this was well vetted in a public setting, which was the original intent of the call for a special meeting. I hope you will join us in doing that unanimously.
Okay, so I think that motion applies to both items on the agenda.
Yes.
Okay. So there's a motion to adjourn that's been moved and seconded. It's not debatable, so we'll take a voice vote, I hope, hopefully. All in favor, please signify by saying aye. Aye. All opposed? Any abstentions? Okay, so the motion passes.
job. Okay.